This is Autoline Daily, the show dedicated to enthusiasts of the global automotive industry. Just 2 years ago, the IEA, or International Energy Agency, forecasted that sales of EVs in the U.S. would hit 50% market share by 2030. Bloomberg New Energy Finance predicted they'd hit 48%. Well, that was then. With the Trump administration and Republican allies looking to eliminate all EV subsidies, the IEA now says EVs and hybrids will only hit 20% share by the end of the decade. Bloomberg NEF says EVs will hit 30%. Even though that's a pretty big drop, automakers would probably be happy with a 30% share, which would be over 5 million EVs a year or 5 times where they're currently running. The IEA also lowered its forecast for how much oil that EVs will displace by the end of the decade. Last year, it said EVs would cut oil consumption by 6 million barrels a day. Now, because EV sales in the US and Europe are growing slower than expected, it says that they'll cut oil consumption by 5.4 million barrels. Currently, the world uses about 100 million barrels a day. And the IEA isn't the only one lowering its EV forecast. Panasonic is mothballing plans to build a third EV battery plant in the US. The CEO of Panasonic says he's relieved that they didn't move forward on that third plant. And it sure looks like Subaru is going to slow down its investment in EVs. In fact, the battery electric Trailseeker SUV that it unveiled a month ago at the New York Auto Show may not even make it to the US market now. It was supposed to go on sale next year. But Subaru faces a double whammy. Not only are sales of EVs growing far slower than it expected, the Trailseeker, which would be made in Japan, would face 25% tariffs. If it can't sell the Trailseeker in the US, Subaru doesn't have enough sales volume in the rest of the world to justify putting it into production. The American market accounts for about 80% of Subaru's global sales. As we reported earlier in the week, there's a showdown brewing over California's stricter zero-emission sales mandate that goes into effect this year. They require that 35% of 2026 model year vehicles must be zero-emission, and it increases 8% a year until 2035 when it becomes 100%. Vermont is one of 11 other states that have adopted the rules, but its governor, Phil Scott, just paused the requirements because its EV sales are only around 10%. Car dealers have also warned that the mandate will limit the kinds of vehicles that they can sell, which also factored into Vermont's decision. Maryland has paused the mandate as well until the 2028 model year, and we wouldn't be surprised to see more states do the same. And speaking of scaling back environmental plans, General Motors is suspending a $55 million project with Piston Automotive to open a hydrogen fuel cell plant in Detroit. The automaker and supplier formed the deal last September, but GM says it has paused work at the plant and will decide whether to move forward in the coming weeks. It's not clear why GM is pausing the project and would only say that it has not been entirely canceled.
There's nothing wrong with heavy metal.
Hey, lighten up.
But with world-class composite material, Teijin Automotive Technologies makes vehicles lighter, safer, and more eco-friendly.
According to the head of the EPA, quote, everybody hates stop-start technology, so the agency is going to, quote, fix it. Stop-start shuts the engine off anytime the vehicle comes or is coming to a complete stop, and then starts it back up again once you let off the brake pedal. In some vehicles, that process can be unpredictable and jarring, so some people shut it off. While the EPA doesn't mandate the technology, it did start handing out emission credits to automakers who installed it in 2014. But by 2016, only 9% of vehicles had stop-start. So the EPA ramped up the credits in 2017. From what we can find, the average credit is 3 grams of CO2 per mile per vehicle, which we estimate is an increase of about 1 mpg. That adds up fast when you apply it to each vehicle over their normal service life. And by 2022, 60% of vehicles had stop-start technology. but we think the EPA is going to drop the credit, so it will be interesting to see how that impacts the rollout of stop-start technology. At the end of April, Ford said it's piloting what it calls lithium manganese rich, or LMR cells, at a battery center in Michigan. These batteries are safer, more energy dense, and cost less than other types of batteries, and Ford hopes to have them in vehicles before the end of the decade. Now GM announced that it's working with LG on a similar cell chemistry that will come out around the same time as Ford. GM and LG are developing prismatic LMR cells and aim to commercialize production by 2028. They will also make the batteries in Michigan, so we wonder why the two automakers don't just partner up on LMR cells. Kia is showing off a wheelchair-accessible version of its PV5 electric van. The model features a side entry system that allows wheelchair users to board from the sidewalk. It also includes a third-row tip-up seat that allows caregivers to assist wheelchair passengers from the side. Other highlights include a 300-kilogram or 660-pound rated wheelchair entry ramp and a specially developed wheelchair belt fastening system. The van will be built in South Korea, but it will initially launch in the UK and then expand to other markets. Bosch is making it perfectly clear that it's investing heavily in the U.S. market. The giant German supplier invested $2 billion in capex in the U.S. so far this decade and plans to make another $6 billion in acquisitions. With President Trump heavily criticizing the EU, it's a smart move for European companies to point out how heavily invested they are in the United States. And here's Bosch's story. It's been operating in the U.S. since 1906, employs 20,000 people, and has 15 manufacturing facilities in 6 different states. Bosch is involved in multiple industries, including consumer goods, industrial technology, building and energy technologies, and of course, automotive, where it's involved in powertrains, ADAS, and all the other little pieces of technology and components that go along with that. And we mention this because it shows the delicate dance that foreign suppliers have to go through now to try and protect their business in the U.S. Toyota is launching an all-new EV version of the CHR that's scheduled to hit U.S. showrooms sometime next year. It's built on the same platform as the BZ, more on that in a moment, and comes standard with all-wheel drive. Total system output is 338 horsepower, and Toyota estimates it will do 0 to 60 miles an hour, which is similar to 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in around 5 seconds. The model is equipped with a nearly 75 kilowatt-hour battery pack, which is expected to return around 290 miles or 466 kilometers of range. Other highlights include a native NACS charging port, a standard 14-inch display screen, and a host of other driver assistance technologies. Now let's go back to the BZ, which has dropped the 4X from its name for the 2026 model year. While still available in front-wheel drive, the new BZ gets most of the same hardware as the CHR EV. The same 338 horsepower all-wheel drive system, which is a 50% increase over the previous model, the same NACS charging port, and the same 14-inch display screen. It also gets a 25% range bump up to 314 miles and a smaller, roughly 58 kilowatt-hour battery that will be available on some front-wheel drive models. The new BZ will come out sometime in the second half of this year. But that brings us to the end of today's show. Thanks for making Autoline part of your day.
Autoline Daily is brought to you by Intrepid Control Systems. Over-the-air engineering boost your game. Teijin Automotive Technologies, the formula for better mobility. And by